What's good, everybody? Welcome into Daily Betslip on a Wednesday. I'm your host, Donnavan. Smoot. Got the homie Peter Dewey with me today. We got a whole bunch to get into today. We have a lot of baseball. We have our game of the night, Cardinals, Blue Jays. We have some NBA free agency talk. Kind of have to do our bi-weekly Kevin Durant check-in just to make sure that we know where everything's, standing in that. Our game of the night is at the end of the show. So if you guys want to participate and comment and tell us what pick to back, go on YouTube and you guys can chime in there. Hop on Twitter, vote on the poll there. But Peter, what is going on, man?
Dude, I'm doing good, man. Other than the fact that the Yankees lost last night, that wasn't a great feeling. But we got a lot of good baseball today. I'm actually in the office, in the Minute Media office in New York today, so been a good day. Wish you were here though, joining me for sure.
I know. Listen, we the rest of the team. So me, Ben, and Joanne, we're still at home in our central time. We're not in New York. But next time we're gonna get together. We're gonna have to get a live daily bet slip together where everybody's actually in the studio. We're for sure gonna get that set up. But today, let's start with our bad beat of the day. Came from the Guardians and the Red Sox last night. So the total was 10 in this game, and the game was at 7-2, right? So total sitting at 9 in the eighth, and both teams scored one run in the eighth inning to push it over 10. It's Listen, it's not a historical bad beat, but if you're sitting there, that's a sweat that you're just waiting and waiting and waiting for the over to just lock in. It's just a bad beat, you know?
Yeah, and especially because the Guardians have like a top 10 bullpen. So if you're betting on the under in that game, like you got through the starters, Boston starter, Josh McCowski's not very good. So you got through the starters, you got to the back ends of the bullpen, you're like, hey, maybe Cleveland can keep this thing down and they both give up a run. Like it's I feel like it's correct me if you think this is different, but like I think it's not as bad as if like one team goes and scores like 2, 3 runs in that inning, they just like go on a run. Both teams like pushing across one run, I feel like that's extra brutal. Like that's like, come on, man. Like, are you serious?
Yeah. It feels like both sides are against you rather than just like,
Yeah.
okay, this is just gonna happen. They just got hot. It'd be like that sometimes. But tonight, the total in that game, we'll see if there's another bad beat. The total actually dropped from 10 from yesterday to 8.5 tonight. We have Cal Quantrell on the mound tonight for the Guardians. So we will get into those picks later in today's. But right now, I want to get into our best bets of the day. Both Peter and I have nothing but baseball bets for everybody. So Peter, I want to start with your best bet of the night, and let's see where you're starting us off with today.
Yeah, let's stick with Guardian Sox. Why not? We talk a little Guardian Sox and bad beat. Let's talk about best bets too. I'm gonna take the Guardians tonight on the money line. They're an underdog plus 110 to take 2 out of 3 against this Boston team. We've talked about Boston. We talked about the Sidney Sweeney curse earlier in this week. Like Boston's really struggling right now. They have been one of the worst teams in baseball over the past month. And you look at this Red Sox team. Their ERA is 6.60 over the last month. That is the worst in baseball. On top of that, they're 22nd in OPS and 23rd in runs scored. So they're not really helping their offense at all because their offense is struggling, pitching staff struggling. I think I kind of like this pitching matchup for Cleveland. Cal Quantrill has won 4 of his last 5 starts. The only game they lost, he allowed 6 runs, but only 3 of them were earned. So not a horrible outing necessarily. And he pitched against Boston about a month ago on June 24th, held them to 2 runs in 5 innings. And I mentioned this at the top of the show in Bad Beat. Cleveland's got a top 10 bullpen ERA this year. Boston is bottom 10. Their bullpen ERA is 4.23. So even though Nathan Eovaldi's going for Boston, he's one of their better starters. I think this game ends up getting to a point where you're going to have to rely on a bullpen to win you the game. I like Cleveland's more than Boston's. I honestly think they should be favored in this game with the way the Red Sox have been playing. So I'll gladly back them as an underdog.
Yeah, and listen, I'll actually stay in that game myself. We both have a pick on that game. Now I'm gonna take the under for Cal on his strikeouts under 4.5. And so this is actually going against, both Ian and Reed are both taking the over on his strikeouts today, and you can read their reasoning in our best bets over at BetSided. But I'm taking the under because since June 1st, he's only cleared 4.5 strikeouts once, and tonight he's gonna face one of he's gonna face a Red Sox team that, even though that they're struggling, they're still at home, and I don't think that Quantrill is going to be able to get out of his normal stuff. I think that they're going to lean on that excellent bullpen of theirs, and try and get the game that way. And so I think both of us can get our bets to hit in terms of like a Guardians win and Cal hitting the under. And so it's a little juiced at 155, but still I don't think that he's been consistent enough to where I can back him. And so I actually want to go over to my next pick after this, and then I want to get to you because our last three picks are coming from the same game.
Okay,
But
I like it.
my next pick is I'm going Kevin Gossman over 5.5 strikeouts today. This one also a little bit juiced at minus 165, but I really, really like Kevin Gossman. He's been great all season, and I think he has another good performance today. He's hit the over on this line in four of his last five starts, even getting into the double digits twice. He struck out 10 twice in the last 5 games, and so the Cardinals are a tough team to get swinging and missing. But the last time that he faced against the Cardinals, he struck out 8 batters, and so I think that he knows St. Louis. He's going to be able to get some momentum going, and I'm going to ride the hot hand on this one. And so I'm curious, what you think about that Gossman pick.
I like the Gospel one because I think you have to remember too. Arizona doesn't have Paul Goldschmidt or Nolan Arenado in the, or St. Louis. I'm sorry, doesn't have Paul Goldschmidt or Nolan Arenado in this series because they're not vaccinated. So that means you got two bench guys who are going to play in place of your two best hitters. I think that's worth a shot. I'm actually surprised that it's at 5.5. Like I get the juice because I would probably have thought he would have been around 6.5 or 7. So I think it's worth a shot. Like the way you got to look at some of these props sometimes is like, yeah, the juice like might try and steer you away, but at the same time, it's like if that's the way you feel and that's the way you're leaning, like winning the bet on that kind of juice is better than losing the bet and taking a
Exactly.
plus money prop. So um, I like that play for sure.
Exactly. All right. So I know the rest of our picks are coming from the Subway Series tonight. So I want to know, where are you going with the rest of your best bets?
Yeah, so the first one, I'm all over the Mets tonight. I'm taking their team total over 3.5 runs at minus 150. I debated taking their first 5 innings total over 2.5. I actually don't mind that if anybody out there wants to play that one as well. And the reasoning behind this is Domingo Herman is just simply just not that good of a starting pitcher. The Yankees are going to pitch him again. He got rocked in his first start of the year off the injured list by the Astros. Gave up 6 hits, 5 runs in 3 innings. Um, so obviously 3.5, it seems like a pretty easy clear at that point if he pitches that poorly again. Also, the Mets bats looked really good yesterday. They are not good against lefties. They hammered lefty Jordan Montgomery yesterday. They're much better against righties this year, actually. They're top 10 in the league against right-handed pitchers in OPS and runs scored. And the other thing you got to look at for this Yankees team, the Yankee bullpen has been banged up. They lost Michael King for the year recently. They've already lost Chad Green for the year. Yesterday, they had to kind of unload a lot of their bullpen because Montgomery couldn't get through 4 innings. So now you're looking at a team that's going to have a tired bullpen, most likely have to pitch a couple guys back-to-back days, and a starter who has gotten absolutely hammered to start this year. I think the Mets probably roll in this one. 4 runs seems very doable, especially with the way the ball was flying out of the ballpark yesterday. So I'm going to back it even at minus 150 odds.
Yeah, I like that as well. We've seen with the Yankees, even going into coming out of the All Star break, and then even going into the All Star break, and something's just off right now, and they don't look like the same Yankees team that was, as Reed would say, a wagon that was just rolling through everybody. A couple weeks before the All Star break, they got up early yesterday and ended up letting the Mets go on a 6-1 run to win that game. So I'm with it. I think that the Mets tonight. I'm with you. I think I'm all over them tonight. Where does your next pick come from?
Yeah, so my next one is kind of a play off of this team total runs. I'm taking Max Scherzer to record a win. He's getting the start for the Mets tonight at plus 125. Thought this was just a better way than backing the Mets to just win the game because I believe they're minus 175 to win. Um, and the way I look at it, Max Scherzer, you look at his numbers this year. I know he's been banged up, but he has one start that he hasn't gone at least 5 2/3 innings so far this year. So he's going to get you deep enough into this game. I think if he gets through 6, there's a very good chance he gets the decision. The Yankees couldn't hit the Mets bullpen yesterday. They did not score or run against the Mets bullpen. So that's a bright side if you're a Mets better, if you're going to back Scherzer in this prop. Their bullpens looked really good. But like I said, I don't think Herman gives the Yankees a chance in this game. Like I think they're going to go down early and often, which means there's going to be a favorable situation for Scherzer if he can pitch well. He's only had one start all year that he's allowed more than 3 runs. So if I'm going to back the Mets to score 4+ runs, I'm going to back Max Scherzer to keep this thing under wraps. And you know what? I'll take another shot on the Mets bullpen. So I like Scherzer to get a win better than just taking the Mets at minus 175 to win the game.
Yeah, and listen, so I'm not opposed to your Max Scherzer play because again, like I think that the Mets have real value today, but I'm also making a play on Scherzer, but I'm taking the under on his strikeouts. So his strikeout line is at 8.5, and the reason why I'm taking the under is because it's kind of like I'm kind of zigging where everybody else is zagging. Listen, he's been great since his return. He's only missed this line once in the 4 starts that he's had since his return. But the Yankees aren't. They're about middle of the pack for the season in terms of strikeouts per game. And even though that's a small sample size, they are top 10 in least strikeouts per game over the last 3 games. And so Scherzer is coming off a start where he missed his start, where he missed this line. He missed it by the hook, so he had 8 strikeouts. I think when you couple that with the fact that the Yankees, even though that the offense hasn't been rolling, they're still not just easy strikeouts. And so Scherzer is really, really gonna have to work tonight in order to get to that line. I think that he might ultimately end up with the win, but 9 strikeouts and asking for 9 strikeouts seems like a bit much tonight. So I'm gonna take the under on that one. But we do have a recap graphic of all of our picks, so let's get to that real quick. And so we're really covering only 2 games here, which is crazy. But so you have the Guardians money line plus 110 against the White Sox, the Mets over 3.5 team total runs, and then you have Max Scherzer to record a win at plus 125. I'm taking the under on Cal Quantrill's strikeouts. I'm taking the under on Max Scherzer's 8.5 strikeouts, but I'm taking the over on Kevin Gossman's strikeouts tonight. And so that is where we are leaning for tonight's matchups. And I want to switch gears. And so, like I said earlier in the show, we kind of have to do our bi-weekly Kevin Durant check in, make sure that everything is still good. And so there's 3 teams, right? So Durant obviously he still isn't traded, but there's really 3 teams that have solid packages that you can throw out to the Nets in order to get Durant, right? So you have the Celtics in their package, which was recently reported as Jaylen Brown, probably Marcus Smart, and some draft capital. You have the Pelicans, where you have Brandon Ingram will likely be the center of that deal, and a whole bunch of draft picks because the Pelicans have 13 future first round draft picks, which is ridiculous. And then you have the Raptors, who can offer Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OJ Anunoby, Gary Trent, and then they have their host of draft capital. So what I'm curious to know is that for you, if you're the Brooklyn Nets, what's the best trade package, and which trade package would you look to as the one that you're going to take for Kevin Durant?
Yeah, so I think this is really interesting because obviously the Durant, it's funny that we mentioned these 3 teams as probably the ones that can put together the best package, right? And 2 of them happen to be in the Nets division. So by that reasoning, I'm going with New Orleans. And I actually also think New Orleans can offer probably the best package because Brandon Ingram maybe he isn't the player Jaylen Brown is right now. I think he can be on the same level as Jaylen Brown. You watched the playoffs last year. Brandon Ingram took over some games last year. He looked fantastic as like a number one option, which they brought CJ McCollum in to kind of take some pressure off of him. Now this year, I think with him and Zion Williamson, like he can be even more dominant. So if you're the Nets, the way you look at it is, well, he's going to have Ben Simmons around him. You're going to have some other guys, depending upon what else you get back in a trade. Maybe if you trade Kyrie Irving for something. So I kind of like Brandon Ingram as a number one option in an offense. And you also move Kevin Durant to the Western Conference, so you don't have to worry about him potentially knocking you out of a playoff spot. Obviously, the Raptors and Celtics both made the playoffs last year, but if you're the Nets, like the last thing you want to do is have to play Kevin Durant in your division, several times a year. The real question is, I don't think the Pelicans are actually going to offer a deal, to be honest with you. They haven't really been put out there as like a strong pursuit of Durant, because I think they're thinking the same way that I just kind of mentioned. Like, we have Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. They're both young. Let's just kind of see how we can build around them. But at the same time, if you're New Orleans and you're trying to win now, like last year they didn't have Zion. They end up getting the 8 seed. They take the Suns to 6 games. Like, this is a good basketball team. If they could find a way to get Brooklyn to own up to a Ingram, maybe Kira Lewis Jr. or Trey Murphy, one of their young guys. Probably not Herb Jones. I doubt that the Pelicans would want to trade him. And then just a few picks, like that accelerates your timeline. The thing you have to think about with the Durant trade, and I think the Raptors are in the same scenario, is like, if your main piece you're trading is like 10 to 15 years younger than Kevin Durant, you better be ready to win a championship now. I don't know if the Pelicans are there. So that's the only reason why I think on their side they wouldn't do it. But if I'm the Nets, that is the team that I'm hoping comes and makes an offer, because you get the younger Brandon Ingram, you get, draft capital, maybe another young player that can really play. But I think the more important thing is you don't have to play Kevin Durant more than 2 times a year. You're just going to play the Pelicans twice. You get them out of your conference, probably gives you a better chance to still make the playoffs, because at the end of the day, the Nets don't have any of their own picks because of the James Harden trade. So they still are trying to be a playoff caliber team. That's why the asking price for Durant has started at like an all-star caliber player, because they know even if we got 15 draft picks and we tanked, we don't have any of our own draft picks. So the team we trade Kevin Durant to, their picks are going to be terrible and our picks are going to be good, but we don't own our own picks. So I think getting him out of the East should be priority number one if it's possible. And then obviously you want to get the return. But I think if the return is similar, like Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Jaylen Brown, I think you're talking players with like similar ceilings of what you're thinking of. I would prefer get him out and get Brandon Ingram there. I also just don't think the gap between Brandon Ingram and Jaylen Brown is that big, but I'm intrigued on what you think about that take.
Yeah, and so before we get to the Pelican side of it, our guy Ben Heisley chimes in. He said that he would love to see Durant return to Oklahoma City, finish where he started, and obviously, Oklahoma City, they have all of the first-round draft picks in the world that they can offer to Brooklyn. That would certainly replenish their draft capital. But there's 4 years left, and so like you said, I don't know if even if Durant goes back to Oklahoma City, I don't think that they're in a position to compete for a championship immediately. And so I don't know if that would, like you said, I don't know if that would make the most sense for Oklahoma City to do, just because they would still need a lot of other pieces. Like, they still have a lot of depth issues, even if you get Kevin Durant to go and try to be a championship contender. But as for the Pelican side of it, I don't know. Like, if you're adding Kevin Durant and Zion Williamson in one offseason, like the gap between Brandon Ingram and Jaylen Brown may not be that big. The gap between Brandon Ingram and Kevin Durant is that big, right?
Yeah.
So like if you add that and you add Zion Williamson to the roster, I mean, it's definitely a team that's not going to be in the play-in, considering it, that everybody's healthy. And I actually think that team has a real chance to get to the conference finals, potentially even the finals, if you add those two and they play at their potential, which is absolutely insane. I think that for me, the offer that I think is the best for Brooklyn is the Boston Celtics. I think even though that they're in the same division, they're in the same conference, if you can get Jaylen Brown, who I think is the best player that they're going to get right now, out of any team, like Jaylen Brown's a good player. He's a really good player. So if you can get him and the Celtics would probably try and offer Derek White and not give up Marcus Smart. So if you can get Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and a couple first round picks, like that's something that you can build off of. And I know the hesitation would be, okay, we're building something, and why would you rather have 3 years of a championship window rather than 5 to 7 if you had Brown and Tatum moving forward? But Jaylen Brown is a free agent in 2 years, so who's to say that when it comes time for everybody to start getting paid, that they're going to be able to keep that core together? I think that for years we've seen the Celtics be on the precipice of being able to go out and trade for that superstar, that top 5 NBA player or talent, and they just haven't done it. They had a chance to do it with Paul George, Anthony Davis, with Kawhi Leonard, and they didn't pull the trigger at all. And now they have an opportunity to go get Kevin Durant. And I think if it comes down to, like, if they're able to fill out the rest of the deal, if it comes down to, do we want to keep Jaylen Brown or do we go get Kevin Durant right now? You go get Kevin Durant 10 times out of 10. And so that's why I think for both sides, it's probably a win-win.
I don't disagree with that. I think that's almost another reason why, if I'm Brooklyn, I prefer the Ingram deal, just because he's got 3 years on his deal compared to Brown's 2. You don't know if you're going to get Jaylen Brown to stay. At least you get a little bit longer of a runway with Ingram. But that's why, I think for the Celtics, and I think I'm interested on your thoughts on this. I think Kevin Durant's being grossly underrated in this trade market right now, in my opinion. It's Kevin Durant. We're not talking about DeMar DeRozan getting traded. This is Kevin Durant. You're trading for a top 10 player of all time, not a top 10 player now, top 10 player of all time, top, probably in terms of scoring, top 5 greatest scorers in the history of the NBA. And so if you're Boston right now, who is 2 games away from winning the NBA Finals, you mean to tell me that adding Kevin Durant isn't going to give you a better chance? Of course it's going to give you a better chance to win the NBA Finals. And if I'm the Nets too, I agree why they said Marcus Smart. There's no way I would trade Kevin Durant for Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and only a couple draft picks. There's no way. He's worth way more than that. So to me, I think that's the other thing too. If you're Brooklyn, I know Reed has talked about this a bunch on BetSlip too. If you're Brooklyn, just stand pat. What is Kevin Durant going to do? He's under contract for 4 more years. Kevin Durant, known ball is life, true hooper guy. He is not sitting out an NBA season. I refuse to believe that. So if you're the Nets, it's if we don't get market value for Kevin Durant, why are we going to trade him? Because the Nets are a damn good team if they run back what they have on that roster right now. And you add Ben Simmons to the fold. So it's if you're the Nets, I don't feel forced to trade him. If people are going to lowball you, if the Pelicans offered them Ingram and Trey Murphy and 4 picks, I'd probably say no. I don't think that's fair market value for Kevin Durant. It's just not. And we talk about the championship window. We don't know if 4 years of Kevin Durant is going to be the same player, but we know right now for next year, you're getting that same player. And if you can win a championship the next year, you make that trade 10 times out of 10, I think, if you're really in the business of winning a championship. Because you pointed out with Jaylen Brown, he could be gone in 2 years. They also might not get back. Part of the reason the Celtics got there this year is because Chris Middleton was hurt. I just think the whole thought process should be, let's go get a championship as fast as we can get a championship. I don't care how it gets done, because if you win the championship, nobody is going to question, imagine what Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum would have done. Nobody's going to care if you go and win 2 rings in a row with Kevin Durant. I just think the whole thing, people being scared to give up too much for him because of the age and the injury concerns, it's Kevin Durant. I can't, it's so hard to compare this. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, it's good.
Who in NBA history of this magnitude has ever been on the trade block and actually going to get traded? I can't even think. I know Kobe requested a trade. He never ended up getting traded. Who has ever been of this magnitude where you're this guy's going to get dealt and there's nothing we can do about it? That. Maybe Shaq, but Shaq was past this. That's the only guy I can think of that is it's just insane that I feel the offer has to be through the roof for them to do it.
And that's the problem. I don't think that anybody is underrating Kevin Durant. I think the problem is that if you give fair market value for Kevin Durant, you are decimating your team, and then you are no longer in a position to go and win a championship. We saw this last year we saw two things. We saw one, both teams in the NBA Finals were fairly homegrown, and they had a lot of continuity, and they had guys who played together all the time. That was one. Two, you saw that the Warriors were able to go 9, 10 deep, and they could go into their bench and say, "Hey, Moses Moody, we need you to come in for 5 minutes and give us a little bit of something." Kevon Looney, who hasn't played in a series and a half, come in and change the series for us. They have depth. Boston, at once you got past their sixth man, Boston 7 through 9, 7 through 10 wasn't good enough. And so if you're telling me that a team that already is suspect depth wise, I know that they added Malcolm Brogdon, but they're already suspect depth wise. If they go and trade whatever depth that they have for Kevin Durant, you are you are saying that you are putting immense pressure on KD to go out and get the job done. And at this point, you just kind of don't want to do that to your stars. That's the same reason why if you're the Raptors, like you can't give up Scotty and OG and Gary Trent and all these picks, which is apparently what the Nets wanted, because then you would know then it would just be you would just have a starting lineup and that's all that you have. But you need a bench. And so I don't think that anybody is I I think you're trying to do what's best for your team, and the only way that you can get that done is if you lowball the Nets to get that. And so when it's either a contending team offers something low and they get Kevin Durant, or a team like Oklahoma City or New Orleans who has a myriad of draft picks, they go and they offer 18 first round picks, or whatever stupid amount of first round picks that they have, and they go and get Kevin Durant, but they're not in a position to win right now because the rest of their roster isn't built out. And so like Ben chimed in again and he said that KD already has two championships and it's about legacy and he doesn't even need to win a championship right away. If I'm Kevin Durant and I get traded back to Oklahoma City and I have to coach up Chet Holmgren and Shea Gilgeous and Josh Giddey, I am upset. Like I don't think that would be a situation that he would be ecstatic to be in. So this whole thing is just really really weird where there's not going to be a middle point. Somebody's getting fleeced in this deal, and it's either going to be the Nets or it's either going to be the Nets or whatever team that they trade with. And newsflash, whoever gets Kevin Durant wins the deal.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so the only way for the Nets to win, like you said, is to keep Kevin Durant on the roster.
And it's
That's
crazy
it.
too because like we saw the Celtics odds go from plus 600 to plus 400 after like the Jalen Brown offer came out. And, like Brian Windhorst was saying, like that was their initial offer. Like they haven't made an offer in like 3 weeks, but like I don't know if it's necessarily like Vegas knows something, but it's just like that's how good the Celtics are. And if you added Kevin Durant, like they become like the clear favorite to win to
Yeah.
win the NBA Finals, which is, I mean, I like him and Jason Tatum would just be insane. Like their defense might be a little bit worse, but at the same time, Jalen Brown's not like some elite defender. Um, I just think it's interesting. You make a good point about the depth. I just wonder, depending upon who the team is, like Boston is one team that I think they could do it. Like if you go and you trade Kevin Durant and you give up Marcus Smart, like obviously they have Malcolm Brogdon, they brought in Danilo Gallinari. Like if you give up Brown and Smart and maybe Grant Williams, I don't know who. Like they don't really have any young guys necessarily left that they could really trade. Like the guy I kind of think would be nice in Brooklyn would be Robert Williams. Like that would be the guy I would want if I
You
was
can't give him up.
no, I know Boston can't give him up. I'm saying
Yeah.
if I'm Brooklyn, that would be the guy I would want. Um, but at that point, it's like you have to wonder, can we fill out this roster with some of the vets that are still in free agency? Like I don't have everybody off the top of my head, but like I know Carmelo Anthony's out there. Like for some, like you have some wing slash forward depth. Like depending upon teams who have their mid level exception available, I don't believe Boston has the full mid level, but like Colin Sexton's still out there. So if you're like, hey, Colin Sexton, come play for us, win a championship this year, build your value up, and then you can hit free agency next year, like that's also a possibility. I feel like you can find like solid, like wing bench role players that are veterans when you have the right team around them. You can't do what the Lakers did last year and make your entire roster that. But at the same time, you can do it if it's like two or three guys and they're around seven other solid guys. So that would be my argument for like you can afford to give up a little bit too much, maybe, but you bring back Kevin Durant because he's going to help erase some of those problems too.
Yeah, and listen, again, whoever gets Kevin Durant in this scenario, whether you trade for him or whether it's the Nets keeping him, they're going to win the scenario. And so all of this is just going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I don't think that Kevin Durant is going to get traded, but as you know, as we've seen plenty throughout the summer and over the last month, we will probably check in about another 2 weeks because another Shams report is going to come out. But it's a long off season. Things have kind of died down a little bit, but this is I'm very glad that we were able to get this perspective on it, and I guess project where Kevin Durant is gonna head out, is gonna play this next season. It's gonna be really really interesting to see how it all comes to fruition. But let's transition again into our game of the night. The reason why we're all here, Cardinals and Blue Jays tonight, and this is really interesting. I'm the Blue Jays have been rolling. The Cardinals, like you said, aren't going to have two of their stars due to vaccination status. So where are you going for your best bet for our game of the night?
Yeah, I'm going to take a prop in this one. It's a tough spot to be in because like the Blue Jays are minus 220 favorites, I believe. So didn't really want to take a side. And I've, full disclosure, not been good betting run lines lately. If anybody tailed my picks on Monday's show, they know that. So I'm like, you know what? Let me stay away from the run lines here. I'm taking Adam Wainwright over 3.5 strikeouts. He's struck out 5+ batters in 5 of his last 7 games. So he's been pretty solid in this spot. And the Blue Jays are kind of middle of the pack in terms of strikeouts. Power hitting team. They're going to have some swing and miss. The thing with Adam Wainwright that I like, and him being just a vet, is he's been pretty consistent in terms of going deep into games this year. You look at his starts since June, he's gone 7 innings, 6 1/3. He has a 4 2/3 mixed in there where he kind of got rocked, but then 7 innings, 5 2/3, complete game, and then 5 1/3 in each of his last 2 starts. So he's going to get you through 5 innings, which if he can get 4 strikeouts in 5 innings, like you're not asking him to do anything crazy. He's got to get 15 outs at that point. So I think he can get there. I know the Jays offense has been on fire, but we've seen Adam Wainwright for like multiple years now just turn back the clock where it was like, oh, this might be his last year. And that's like, oh no, he's still a really good pitcher. And then the next year comes, he's still a really good pitcher. So I like him to get over 3.5 here. You're laying a little bit of juice here, but that's also because he's been hitting this prop fairly often. So if you can get it at 3.5, I would take it.
Yeah, I like the low strikeout total in this one for Wainwright because so I'm going on the opposite side though. I'm taking the Blue Jays on the run line tonight, and that's because their offense is humming. Like in the last 30 days, they have the second best OPS in baseball. They have the least amount of strikeouts, and then they're just outside the top 10. They're like 11th. They're just outside the top 10 in home runs in the last 30 days. So they are firing on all cylinders. And then obviously with I backed Kevin Gausman earlier in the show. So I think both of those things combined is gonna create a really good situation for the Blue Jays tonight. They are minus 115 on the run line. So I think that those are also really good odds. And so I think that Toronto is going to be able to keep it up. And the fact that the St. Louis is going to be missing 2 of its key starters in the lineup, that's gonna contribute to maybe some regression for them. But so that's where I'm going. The community in a rare pick. Normally the community sides with like a run line or with the money line. We're getting ourselves a total tonight, and we're getting a total pick, and they're going over 8 runs, minus 115 tonight. So both of us are putting one down for the over in this game. That's very intriguing. We rarely get picks on the total, so I'm actually very happy to see that the community put that pick in for us. That's going to be fun.
I'm glad the community went this way because we had like it was either going to be a huge dog or a huge favorite, and neither one of them I was going to feel great about betting on. So I like this a lot. There were 13 runs scored in yesterday's game. Obviously, the Blue Jays scored 10 of them. This is a good pitching matchup, but at the same time, you just laid it out. Like the Jays' offense has been absolutely insane. So the Cardinals, basically, I feel like this is going to be a kind of game where if the Cardinals can give you anything on offense, this probably at least pushes. I think that's a pretty good bet. So, and I was gonna say I like your run line play. Just like if I was gonna tell, I'm staying away from them. But if I was gonna take anyone, you have to take the Jays here, just because St. Louis, like their offense has been very weird this year because it's been very good, like to great the whole season. But they have these droughts where they get shut out or they score like one run in games, and it's just weird because you're like, oh, there's all these talented guys. They have multiple all stars on offense and they can't score sometimes. And now you take those two all stars out of the lineup, just way too risky for me for them to keep it close. Even though I think Wainwright is good enough to kind of have them hang around here, but at the same time, their bullpen got rocked last night because I think Andre Palante gave up 3 runs in 4 innings, and the bullpen just got absolutely shelled. Jordan Hicks got crushed. So at the same time, you're kind of like, hey, if we can get through our starter strikeout props and then get this over to the bullpens that give up the runs, I'm fine with it.
Exactly. Yeah. So listen, we have a whole bunch of props for tonight's game. We got Kevin Gausman over 5.5 strikeouts. We got Adam Wainwright over 3.5 strikeouts. We have the Jays on the run line -1.5. And now with a community pick, we're taking the over 8 runs at -115. So we have a lot to bet on for our game of the night. But that is our show. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for participating in our community poll. I will be back tomorrow with Ian. We'll be probably previewing a lot more baseball. The WNBA is back. I'm sure we're going to have some picks on that. So until then, may all your best hits, and we will see you guys next time.